Today's math lesson, we are going to work on building fluency with the division algorithm by finding quotients of whole number dividend and divisors. So on page 280 is the first problem that we're going to take a look at. And it says a tortilla bakery makes 863 packages of tortillas to sell to restaurant. Each restaurant receives the same number of packages as a complete order. How many restaurants can receive a complete order? And then the picture says that we have 18 packages per order. So what I'm going to do for this is I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to set up my problem. So my dividend is the number that's being divided. That's going to be 863. And I'm going to be dividing that by 18 because that's how many packages are in an order. So my first step that I'm going to want to do is I'm going to want to just go ahead and estimate my answer to check my answer for reasonableness. So I'm going to take 863 and I'm going to turn that into 900 because 18 is not a number that I'm pretty familiar with. So I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to round both of these numbers. And when I round both of these numbers, I take off my zeros and I'm left with 90 divided by 2, which is going to be equal to 45. So that's half of 90 is going to be 45. Okay, so my answer is going to be 45. What's nice about my estimate as well is by using my estimate, I can determine what my first number is going to be, or the first value that I'm going to multiply 18 by. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to try 4 and see what I get when I do 18 times 4. Now, that's not a math fact that I know, so I'm just going to do it really quickly off to the side and see what I get when I do 18 times 4. So 4 times 8 is going to be 32. I regroup the 3. 4 times 1 is 4, plus 3 is going to be 72. 72 is less than 86. That's going to work. So I'm going to put the 4 above the 6 because 18 does not go into 8 4 times. 18 goes into 86 4 times. So it's very important that you place that number above the value that the divisor can go into. Otherwise, you'll mess up your problem. Your quotient will be off. So 18 goes into 86 4 times. So you'll notice I put a multiplication symbol here because I'm going to multiply 18 times 4. Well, I already did that. It's 72. My next step is going to be to subtract. So now I'm going to subtract. 6 subtract 2 is going to be 4. 8 subtract 7 is going to be 1. Now, here's what's important here. If this value, so let's say that this value were 19, that would tell me that my math fact of 4 would have been too small. Your quotient or your partial quotient here needs to always be smaller than your divisor. If it's not smaller than your divisor, that means you can go up a math fact and you're going to want to change that. Otherwise, your answer is not going to be the correct answer. My next step now is to go ahead and bring down the 3. So 18, now I'm looking for how many times 18 is going to go into 143. So I'm going to use a strategy. I'm going to use my doubling strategy because I already know what 18 times 4 is. So I'm going to take 72 and I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to double 72. And when I double 72, I get 144. Now, 144, that math fact is too big. But what that tells me is 18 times 8 is too big of a math fact because that's how I got 144. So I'm going to go back a math fact. So I'm not going to use 8, but I'm going to use 7. So again, I need to do this step somewhere off to the side, 18 times 7. So there is a little bit of guess and check when you are doing division, which can be frustrating. But again, notice that I was very smart in the strategies that I used. I looked at my estimation to find my first value, and then I recognized, hey, if I just double 72, that's going to get me near 143, but it was too big. So then I just said, well, I'm just going to go from 18 times 8 to 18 times 7. So 7 times 8 is going to be 56. I'm going to put down the 6. I'm going to regroup the 5. 7 times 1 is going to be 7, plus 5 is going to be 12. So my answer here, my multiplication, 18 times 7 is going to be 126. Then when I subtract that, I have to do some regrouping. So I do 13 subtract 6, which is going to be 7. 3 subtract 2, which is going to be 1. 1 subtract 1, which is going to be nothing. So my answer here is 14 remainder 7. 17. So right now I'm not working on decimals. We're just doing whole numbers. So all of my remainders are going to be, all of my quotients are going to have a remainder if I have a value left over. When we move into our next topic, we'll be writing our remainders as decimals. This topic, we're writing them as remainder 17. So with this question, if I go back to the original question, it says, how many restaurants can receive a complete order? The complete order is going to be this value. So 47 restaurants will receive a complete order. It says, how can you check that the quotient above is correct? Explain your answer. So when we're doing a check or when we're looking at the proof, what you're going to do is you're going to do the opposite operation. So we're going to do multiplication. So what I'm going to do my check is I'm going to do 47 times 18. I don't do anything with the remainder just yet. I do the remainder at the end. So I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to multiply this out. So I get 8 times 7 is going to be 56. I regroup the 5. 8 times 4 is 20 plus 5 is going to be 20. 8 times 4 is 32 plus 5 is going to be 37. I was thinking 5 times 4. So I'm going to have 37 here. Okay. Then I'm going to put my placeholder. 1 times 7 is going to be 7. 1 times 4 is going to be 4. And then I'm going to add and see what I get. So 6 and 0 is going to be 6. 7 and 7 is going to be 4. 3 plus 4 is going to be 7. And then I have that regrouping, which is going to be 8. So right now my answer is 846. Well, I could look at that and say, ooh, that's wrong because I had 863, but I have to make sure that I add in that remainder. And so when I add in that remainder, I end up with 863 as my answer. Okay, moving into your guided practice. So number 1 says Theo needs to put 2,405 cars into bins with 45 cars in each bin. He divided and got 53 remainder 20. How many bins will he fill? So again, when I look at this, if I have 53 remainder 20, the total number of bins that he filled is my quotient. So he filled 53 bins, but was not able to fill 54 because he had 20 cars left over. So he would have a partially full bin. Okay. Number 2, explain how you can decide where to place the first digit of the quotient. 6,139 divided by 153. So we talked about this briefly in that first problem. The first thing I'm going to want to do is I'm going to want to use estimation to help me decide. So I'm going to take this value. Remember yesterday we talked about always starting with your divisor, and I'm just going to make it 150. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take 6,139 and I'm going to round it to 6,000. And here's why. Because if I just look at 61 and I just look at the first 2 digits of 15, 15 is near, I can get a math fact of 15 near 61. So I go ahead and I cross off my zeros and I end up with an extra 0 right here. So I'm going to go ahead and put it over my quotient. That goes away. I'm left with 60 divided by 15, which is going to be 4. So my first answer or my estimate is going to be 40. So this right here tells me I should put this in the tens place value. So my first digit in my quotient bar is going to go in the tens place value and not the ones place value. So let me show you what I'm talking about. So the tens place value, when I write this, again, remember in quotients, tens place value is not going to be, it's going to be over here with the 3. So I'm going to put it in the tens place value. Okay. Alrighty, let's take a look at your division problem. So we'll take a look at that first division problem. I have 48 divided by, or divided into 9,853. So I'm going to go ahead and start by looking at just briefly how many times 48 is going to go into 98. So 48 is going to go into 98 two times, and then 48 times 2. So if I need to do the work off to the side, I'm going to do the work off to the side. I get 16. I regroup. 4 times 2 is 8, plus 1 is 9, so I get 96. So I'm going to put 96 underneath the 98, and then I'm going to subtract. I have 2 left over. My next step is to bring down the 5. And now I have to look at how many times does 48 go into 25? It doesn't. So I need to put a placeholder above the 5 to recognize that 48 was not able to go into 25. Then I go ahead and I bring down my 3 and I look at how many times 48 is going to go into 253. So to figure this out, so I'm not just guessing in the dark, I look at my first digit. Here I have a 4. Look at my first 2 digits is 25. 4 is going to go into 25 about 6 times. So I'm going to try 48 times 6 off to the side and see what I get. 8 times 6 is going to be 48. So I put down the 8. I regroup the 4. 6 times 4 is going to be 24, plus 4 is going to be 28. That was too big of a math fact. So I need to go back one. So I'm going to put 5 up here because 48 is going to go into 253 5 times. So just off to the side, I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to multiply. So 48 times 5. 8 times 5 is going to be 40. Regroup the 4. 5 times 4 is going to be 20, plus 4 is going to be 240. So I'm going to write 240 underneath the 53. Subtract. I have a remainder of 13. So again, to check my answer, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and multiply and add that remainder in to make sure that my answer is going to be correct. So let me get that set up. So I'm going to do 205 multiplied by 48. 5 times 8 is going to be 40. I regroup the 4. 8 times 0 is going to be 0, plus 4 is 40. 8 times 2 is going to be 16. Put down my 0. 4 times 5 is going to be 20. Put down the 0. Regroup the 2. 4 times 0 is 0, plus 2 is 2. 4 times 2 is going to be 8. I'm going to add 0, 4, 8, 9, and then I need to add the 13 in, and when I add the 13 in, I get 9,853. For your problems today, in your independent practice, I would like for you to do 5 through 7 because they've already set the problems up with you, giving you workspace. You're going to do 5 through 7 all. And then in the divide where it says check the answer by multiplying, so 8 through 13, I want to see the work. So you are going to have to do this on separate paper. And what I want to see on 8 through 13 on your separate paper is I'd like for you to do the odd. So 8 through 13 on separate paper, odd numbers only. Make sure that you include your multiplication check. So I'm not looking for my estimate to help me with reasonableness. I'm looking for that multiplication. Check your work. Okay. And then you are going to do all of your math practices and problem solving on the back.